think we're gonna get them down there. Good evening. We call to order the Novi Board of Education regular meeting for July 23rd, 2024. Appreciate everybody waiting for us. We were a little busy. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This brings us to approval of the agenda. As we were just discussing this.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, please, that we move the strategic plan report into the action items and just get past that portion.
Okay. So I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Minster and supported by Dr. Ruskin. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, this brings us to celebrations. Mr. Micah, do we have any celebrations for today?
There's a lot to celebrate. It's summertime. Everybody's happy about that. But I would say one of the biggest celebrations is this meeting. This is an atypical meeting for us, but we've had so many amazing people that we get to welcome into the Wildcat family, and so it's going to be a pretty exciting meeting, I think.
Sounds good. And with no school activities going on, I don't think we really have much to celebrate there. So, and this brings us to comments from the audience. If we have any people who want to speak to the board, fill out a green card, give it to Sheila. She'll run it up here. And seeing everybody ducking and dodging, we'll leave it at that. And with no comments to the board, then from the audience, we will move on to consent agenda. This is, let me get to that here. Yeah, this is let me read that real quick. So if in our consent agenda, consent items, we have minutes from a regular meeting of June 13th. We have our DEI Advisory Committee minutes from July 15th. We have approval of bills for June for the board report, check registry, and purchase card. Mr. Mena.
Yeah, I move that the board approve the consent items as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Beaudoin. These usually do not require discussion, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. This brings us to donations. Mr. Micah.
Alrighty. The Novi Educational Foundation is presenting a generous donation in the total amount of $2,500 to help cover the cost of Wildcat stuffies for all of our kindergarten and Wildcat launch students this year. So that's kind of going to be a cool thing. And they are also providing a donation of $4,500 to the district for tutoring students in the district. And so their total donation amount is $7,000.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell.
I move that the Novi Community School Board of Education accept the generous donation in a total amount of $7,000 as presented with appreciation and thanks.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Dr. Ruskin. Questions, comments?
I'd just like to
Mrs.
thank
Beaudoin?
Anya and also say that those little Wildcat stuffies are super cute. And my high schooler still has hers. And they're beloved in our house, so I'm thankful for that.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Any other questions, comments? We do appreciate everything the NEF does for us and for the students, so. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. This brings us to our action items. First is our personnel report A.
Alrighty, this is the highlight of the meeting, so we hopefully get to meet some of our new team members, and so appreciate Dr. Carino and all of the extensive work she does to do such a diligent job in finding qualified people to put with our students, so Dr. Carino.
Thank you. Over the past few weeks, our department, alongside our building administrators and directors from various departments, have been busy interviewing and selecting the very best candidates for our open positions. We are proud of this process and are excited about the candidates we are bringing forward for your consideration this evening. Abigail Coleman is being recommended as a third grade teacher at Orchard Hills. Abigail has previously served as a third grade teacher in Walled Lake and completed her teaching internship in third grade, so she is ready to hit the ground running at Orchard Hills. Sarah Foster is being recommended as an ELD teacher at Parkview. Sarah has extensive professional experience working with ELL students in her previous role as a teacher in Dearborn Heights. Alicia Goins is being recommended for our other third grade teaching position at Orchard Hills. Alicia comes to us with over 14 years of experience in K-5 education and most recently served as a teacher development specialist in Jacksonville, Florida. She's previously served as a literacy interventionist and school-based assessment coordinator as well. Melanie Greslick is being recommended as a sixth grade teacher at Novi Meadows. We are happy to have her return to Novi as she previously taught at ELA at Novi Middle School back in 2017. Stephanie Hawkins is being recommended for a position change as a kindergarten teacher at Orchard Hills. Stephanie previously has served as our Young Fives teacher at the ECEC since 2017. Heidi Ingalls is being recommended for the shared Parkview Deerfield ELD teacher position. She has previously served as an EL coordinator at Canton Charter Academy and was an EL paraprofessional prior to becoming a teacher. We are also excited to recommend Andrew Pola for one of two high school science teacher positions this evening. Andrew has experience as a biology, honors biology, and environmental science teacher in Indiana, and biology, honors biology, environmental science, forensics, and anatomy and physiology teacher in Grosse Pointe. We also recommend Kara Redmond for the Novi Meadows ELD teacher position. Kara has worked as a middle school language arts teacher in Florida and also was a high school EL instructor in Chippewa Valley prior to that. Julia Tatuskin is being recommended for our second high school science teacher position. Julia has previously worked as a high school biology teacher in Kentwood, and she is also a proud Novi grad. Caitlin Vickers is also being brought forth for your consideration for the first grade teacher position at Parkview. Caitlin has worked as a first grade teacher for over 12 years in the National Heritage Academy's charter school system. We also bring forward two candidates tonight for preschool non-union positions. Alyssa Collins is being recommended as a preschool teacher at ECEC. She has worked as a child care instructor in Livonia for the past 2 years and also completed her student teaching at the ECEC in Novi Woods in the 2020-2021 school year. Kyla Willoughby is also being recommended for one of our preschool teaching positions. Kyla has served as a lead pre-K teacher at a private child care facility and also was a first grade teacher at a Catholic school in Ohio. We are excited to recommend Kelly Evans for the position of Administrative Assistant in the Talent Management and Development Department in our ADNU group. Kelly brings a wealth of knowledge and strong skill set as the previous main office secretary at Parkview. Kelly has a strong customer service focus which will serve her well in this new role. Finally, we recommend Sandra Demianovich for the position of Facilities Secretary at the ECEC. Sandra comes to us with experience as a clerical aide, middle school receptionist, attendance clerk, and building secretary. She has over 20 years of school office experience. We have a few retirements and resignations. Andrew Sari, coordinator of special education transition services, has resigned effective June 26th. Ashley Weinart, high school psychologist, has resigned effective June 9th. Gretchen Samborski, guest teacher specialist, has resigned effective June 26th. Jesse Lolo, bus driver, has chosen to retire effective June 7th. Jeffrey Bunker, our senior maintenance technician, will be retiring on August 30th. Nelson Estrada, maintenance technician, has resigned effective July 12th. In our non-bargaining groups, Lindsay Gearlock, shared time teacher at St. Matthew, has also resigned. James Muntz, adult ed ESL teacher and career prep social studies teacher, has resigned as well, as Sasha Roberts Levi, career prep art teacher, has also chosen to resign at the end of the year. We thank them for their work in MCSD and wish them well, and that concludes Personnel Report A this evening. Thank you.
You get a recommendation? Dr. Ruskin.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopts the personnel report recommendation as presented.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Ruskin, supported by Mr. Mitchner. Any questions? Comments? Save those for when you do introductions. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Welcome aboard, everybody, and you want to do introductions now?
We do. We have quite a few of our newest hires in attendance, so we are very excited for that. So in no particular order, we will bring up Sarah Foster. She is our Parkview ELD teacher.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Yes.
Is there a reason why this is not showing?
Good evening, Sarah Foster. Nice to meet all of you tonight. This is Sophia. She'll actually be a kindergartner this year in Novi. I'm very excited to be a part of the district, looking forward to joining the Parkview team, and ready for a great school year, ready to meet all the staff, the students, and the families. Thank you.
Alicia Goins.
Hello, everyone. I'm also very excited to be joining Novi Community School District. I'm very excited to be at Orchard Hills Elementary School. Both my nieces are students there, so I'm super excited about that. And I'm really glad to be back in the Midwest. I'm going to miss the sunshine, though, in Florida. I would look forward to working with each of you. Thanks so much.
Stephanie Hawkins.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. As Dr. Carino said, I've been lucky enough to spend the last 7 years within the Novi District over at the Early Childhood Education Center. There I've made the most incredible relationships with coworkers, administrators, community members, parents, and most importantly, students, 121 of them to be exact. Not that I'm counting. But I'm very excited to be spreading my wings and heading to kindergarten at Orchard Hills. I think it's going to be a great move, and I'm very excited. Thank you.
Heidi Ingalls.
You
Good
can-
evening, everyone.
You can introduce your support staff too when you come up here.
Yeah, your family.
Like Dr. Carino said, I will be working at both Deerfield and Parkview Elementary as an ELD teacher. I am coming from Canton Charter Academy, where I was an ELD teacher for the past 4 years. I was also the coordinator of the department for the last 3 years. I am extremely honored to be a part of Novi Community Schools, and I will work very hard to contribute in keeping Novi Schools the #1 school district in the state. Thank you.
Andrew.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Pola. I'm going to be teaching high school science. Me and my wife moved in January to Novi from over on the east side from Grosse Pointe. I taught there for about 12 years. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited to join the team.
Kara.
Good evening, my name is Kara Redmond, and I'm very excited to be here. I actually graduated from Novi in 2004, so I'm excited to be back. I'll be working at Novi Meadows at the ELD position. Thank you.
Another Novi grad, Julia.
Good evening. I'm Julia Tytuskin, and as Dr. Carino said, I graduated from Novi in 2014, so I'm very excited to be coming back and working alongside a lot of the teachers who kind of inspired me to be a teacher and kind of become part of the community again. So I'm very excited for this coming school year. Thank you.
Caitlin.
Hello there. Thank you for having me today. I'm Caitlin Vickers. I'm here with my husband of 9 years, Ian, and I left at home my two little ones who are 2 and 4 for good reason. But happy to be here today. I've taught first grade for 12 years, so I'm excited to be in first grade again at Parkview Elementary. And some of my old colleagues work for Novi and have told me so many great things, including one that I'm going to be working alongside at Parkview. So I'm very excited for this opportunity and all the good things that I've heard to come to fruition. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Alyssa.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be coming back to Novi. As was stated before, I completed my student teaching here during COVID, the 2020 to 21 school year. It was a lot, but I'm very glad to be back during the normal time of the school year. I am very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kyla Willoughby. I'm going to be on the preschool team at the Early Childhood Education Center. I'm looking forward to this opportunity, as everyone said. I think it's going to be a great school year, and I'm excited to put my experience to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Evans. My family and I moved here in 2016. Shortly thereafter, I began working at Parkview as their building guest teacher, and then as their main office secretary for the last 5 years, which I absolutely loved and will miss. But I'm excited about my new opportunity. A week ago, I started as an administrative assistant on Dr. Carino's talent management and development team. And I'm very excited to continue my passion in helping the staff and the students and the teachers in the district in my new role. I also want to welcome all of you, as I will be a new point of contact for you in HR, and I just want to welcome you to the district, and I'm super excited for you, and you're going to love it. So, thank you.
Last but not least, Sandra.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I moved away from Michigan about 12 years ago. My husband and I just moved back about 3 months ago. My high school sweetheart, Craig, is with me tonight. We're happy to be back in the good state of Michigan and be with family and friends, and I'm so excited to be the facility secretary for the district. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
That's all for report A?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to personnel report B.
Yep. Dr. Carino?
Okay.
Sorry.
As you know, Personnel Report B is reserved for administrative hires, and tonight is certainly no exception. We are very excited to bring Emily Wrights forward this evening for your consideration as a new Dean of Students at Novi Meadows. Emily has served as the student success coach there this past school year, providing behavioral support, connecting families to resources, and supporting the building administration. Previously, Emily has served as a teacher, principal, and dean of instruction. This concludes Personnel Report B this evening. Thank you.
Can I get a recommendation? Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move the board approve the promotion as noted above.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mr. Mitchner. Any questions? Concerns? Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Dr. Crino.
Emily, come on up.
All right, I'm gonna bring some helpers up.
Your chance to shine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when I was here last year, I was really excited to be joining my alma mater. I'm also a Novi grad, class of 2005. I'm really excited to be back, and this is my son Grady. He's going into 3rd grade. This is my son Theo. He's going into 1st grade, and they joined the Novi Jags. So they wore their sporting Novi Jags gear here. I've had such an amazing year at Novi Meadows, and I'm super excited to be able to continue the work and kind of use my experience from being a leader before and to bring it to this space. And mostly I have to say thank you to Allison Bradley in the corner there, my district mentor, and Audrey and Lisa, who've been amazing, and Rosalie and Mike, who've been amazing in helping me out, and then my husband's here too, Greg. So thank you very much.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for bringing your support staff with you. Many of you brought family members and introduced them, and some of you did not, but we appreciate it, and we appreciate all the support that the family members have given you to get to this stage in your career, that you're joining one of the best school districts in the state. So.
I was going to say it was kind of cool that we're still bringing back students, former Novi students, to come back and teach at the school, so welcome back, folks.
Okay. We'll take a short recess, so you don't have to sit here and listen to the rest of the meeting. You can get up and leave if you'd like. So.
But you can if you want to.
We don't mind the company. Welcome back. We will continue on with our action items. This will be the 5-8 technology pouch pilot approval. Mr. Meinke.
Thank you. So at our last board meeting, we talked about some of the research that's affecting mental health in our district and actually across the world and certainly our country. And in that presentation, I cited various statistics about the rise in anxiety, the rise in depression. As a result of some of the alarming statistics, we have purchased a book that most of our staff have received, certainly all of our professional staff. I know the board has received it as well. It's called The Anxious Generation. I read the book about 6 months ago when it first came out, and when you read the book, it's very, very eye-opening in terms of what you're learning about. And I felt like we can't really sit idle knowing the statistics that are objectively there through empirical research. And so through an effort within the district, we've talked about some of the things in those findings of research that we could start to move towards as a district. And one of those things that we would like to pilot, which is going to be here for your consideration this evening, is the idea of using a company called Yonder, and they basically have pouches. And these pouches are going to be opportunities for students to actually take their phones and put them in the pouches in grades 5 through 8. And then they'll have the opportunity to unlock those pouches after the school day. And so we're trying to remove some of the distractions. And as you watch the presentation from the last meeting, you'll see that a lot of pickups and distractions during the school day are leading to loss of instructional time, loss of learning. And so we thought that this would be a good age group to start to do a pilot with because the policy states that the school, essentially is phone free already. Now we know that that's not exactly the case all the time. And so we're hopeful that the pouches will help us create an environment that's truly phone free during the school day. We've gone through a number of logistical things with our team. Students will essentially have unlocking mechanisms mounted on the walls. The quote that you're seeing here, obviously, that is there for your approval tonight, will allow us to purchase those and get those installed. We have practices essentially in our handbook, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, where students that have the phone out will have the phone taken and the parents will have to pick them up, and that's the first offense, and then we go from there. It's progressive. But the essential expectation is that we're taking the fight and the struggle away from the teachers to have to police phones. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. Everybody's got the same policy. And that makes it a lot easier, not just for teachers, but it also makes it easier for the students to understand expectations from class to class. It also makes it easier for parents who, they might feel like this is an issue that they want to try and fight against, but if you have kids that are teenagers, it's a daily battle and a fight, when it comes to my use of technology and how much time I'm going to have. So this pilot proposal will obviously approve us to start this program 5th through 8th grade. We'll be doing a lot of data collection. We'll also be providing a lot of information to our community and parents if we move forward. And the goal is to actually, over the course of the next month and a half, to schedule a town hall meeting where parents can come, hear frequently asked questions, understand the way that we're going to logistically navigate some of the things that they might have questions about in terms of how do I call my student during the day, how do I reach my student in an emergency, all of these things that might come up. So we're going to be doing that as a part of our communication campaign as we move forward. So appreciate your support and consideration in moving this forward with our team, and I'm excited to see if we can move the needle in trying to help limit some of the mental health challenges that our kids are facing during the school day.
Okay, your recommendation, Mrs. Baudouin.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the pilot program for grades 5 through 8 and the purchase of Yonder pouches in the total amount of $76,850.
Support.
Moved by Mrs. Baudouin, supported by Mr. Mena. Do we have any additional questions? Mrs. Baudouin?
I have a little statement I want to read, but if Mr. Mishner wants to go.
You made the motion, you get to go first.
Okay, so this caused me to have a lot of questions initially, and so I put together a quick little thing here that I want to share with the community, and hopefully it will help create a little more understanding. Mr. Meinke has shown us a lot of statistics that illustrate the increased problems our students are experiencing with mental health, and we have all been reading this book, The Anxious Generation. The book talks about two major challenges that in the way our children are experiencing the world in comparison to how we grew up. Generally, our students have less real-life independence and more time on their phones. If you are hearing this proposal and thinking it seems pretty extreme or maybe even unnecessary, I would encourage you to first read this book, as it explains things in a step-by-step way. If you're like many parents and struggle to find the time to sit down and read a whole entire book, I have great news for you. At the end of each chapter, there is a summary with all the important details from that chapter. If you are short on time, start with that TLDR summary. There's also an audio book, and I have found many author interviews available on podcasts and on YouTube. So find your favorite form of media, and please hear what this man has to say. I do not think that I can name a single parent who feels 100% comfortable with the role cell phones and technology are playing in their children's lives. Technology is incredible, but this is also very new, and the impacts are showing up in many ways that none of us anticipated. Many parents I know have talked about this being a difficult issue because every family has different rules, every kid responds to screen time differently, and establishing limits is often met with objections from the children. All of my friends are allowed to play Fortnite. Everybody I know is on Instagram or whatever else. One of the best parts about this plan is that it will be something that all of us can do together. Anecdotally, I have seen so many of the things that are discussed in this book, and I have never really put together the causes and effects. One big thing that hit me as I read the book was how much our kids miss when they're on their phones. My first thought is that we already don't allow phones in these classroom buildings, as Mr. Meinke mentioned. So what is the point of the expense just to put these phones into bags? However, the issue is not just that the kids are missing instruction when they're on their phones. They are missing interaction and connection with your peers. For that reason, I fully support the pouch purchase so that students may actually have an opportunity to interact with their peers. I want to thank Mr. Meinke, the administration, teachers, parents, and students for being so open to this idea. I look forward to everyone learning more. And if you require resources, please email the Board of Ed, and we would be more than happy to send you out information about what this book is. Or I have links to podcasts and interviews and things I'd be happy to research for you. Thank you. That's it for me.
Mr. Missioner.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that as an experienced user of this device, I thought it was actually surprisingly unburdensome. I thought it would cause concern and worry on my part, using it during the workday for an event, but it actually helped me to focus more on the event, less on my phone, and actually I felt like the time spent at the event was actually better used and more focused. And in the specific event I was at, it actually improved safety, so it was very painless to use. I also appreciate the fact that we recognize that although we have a policy in place, the reality of the situation is we didn't have a mechanism in order to successfully execute that policy. And I like the fact that this particular solution provides that tool while providing benefit to all three important constituents, our staff, the students, and the community. The staff no longer are individually responsible for enforcement. It's a global thing that we all do together at a certain time of each day. So it doesn't rely on teacher A and teacher B to enforce it differently, and allows them to teach. It takes the burden off of the students. They don't have to worry about whether their friends have phones out, or they have phones, or missing texts or calls during the day, because no one has the ability to communicate that way. And it should, if their experience is anything like mine, should actually increase their involvement and engagement in school, which should make their experience better. And then for the community, as a parent, I am already getting from my fifth going into sixth grader that so-and-so has a phone, why can't I? And I think this addresses that fight that I think a lot of parents feel is how could I possibly win a discussion when it's me versus thousands of other students in the district with all different rules. I think this helps implement some kind of consistency, and then the parent can do what they feel is appropriate for their child outside of school, but it takes the whole what's going on inside of school out of the equation. So, and I think that makes life, or it should make life simpler for all our parents. So I really appreciate this action, and I definitely will support this tonight.
Sure.
Dr. Ruskin.
I am eager and excited to see how this is gonna roll out in our district. I think there's gonna be some really wonderful benefits. I saw the Yonder pouches for the first time at an educational meeting and thought, ooh, yikes, okay. But wonderful and great that there's an actual solution, because we can all sit around and talk about it, and we've talked about it, and we've heard parents over the years say, you know, phones shouldn't be in schools, phones should be in schools, and everybody has just a different philosophical thought. It's funny because when you tell the teenagers, whether they're teenagers in my house or teenagers throughout the community, their first initial response is, what is going on over there in that ESB? Who's this Mr. Meinka? What is he doing? But I do believe that the predictability of it is great. I know kids who go to summer camp all summer who can't have phones. They can't have phones the entire summer, which if they go to summer camp all summer, you know, and they love it. They love being able to interact with their other peers. They love all the pressures that are taken away from the phones, all the social media stuff that goes on. So I think just talking to your kiddos, especially those kids that have that experience, and saying like, this is no different. You're just doing it during the school day. This is no different than being without it for weeks on end, and think about all the benefits of it. So yeah, there's always quite a bit of hesitancy, even as a parent, of how is this gonna look? How is this gonna work? Are there people that are gonna be angry? Are there people that are gonna, you know, all the things that we all go through when there's change? But I do really love predictability, accountability for the rules that are already set in place. And really just think of how much time our staff is gonna have when they don't have to argue with the kiddos all day about putting the phones away, and all the great things that they can focus on. So I'm excited to see this pilot program and all the data that's gonna come out of it.
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I did see a story today about a district in, I think you sent a couple of you, the article, a district in the Las Vegas area was going to implement this as well. Theirs was a little different. I think they were using a different product. I was just curious, as I was reading that, they mentioned that the couches that they had were signal blocking. I didn't know if ours were or not. And if it's not, what do we do with phones that are locked in there and then all of a sudden ring?
Yeah. So these are things that are gonna happen, there's no doubt. They are not signal blocking, so it's a different type of technology. There's some school districts that have actually thought and actually had the foresight of saying, let's get a signal blocker for a building, you can kind of zone it off. It turns out that that's against the law from an FCC perspective, but you can do a signal blocking pouch. These are not signal blocking. What we found is that the cost is substantially more for those, but not something that's a bad idea to consider. So I think this is an opportunity to try something. But in terms of how we're gonna handle those little nuances, there's a lot of discussion that we're having with building administrators. I know Emily's been a part of some of those conversations. Being at Meadows, one of the things that comes up a lot are the smartwatches, right? So smartwatches, and we have, you know, students that use iPads, and so how do we manage, you know, communicating expectations for those things? The nice thing about the pouch is it can take a watch and a full size, you know, cell phone and put it into this pouch at the same time, and you're good to go. But one of the expectations we'll have for kids is the phone needs to be on silent, in your pouch, and there'll be, I'm sure, warning mechanisms of, hey, you know, your phone's continually beeping and it's in your pouch, so we've got to get that squared away. And so there's going to be obviously things like that that are going to come up, and we'll kind of work through those as a team.
Okay. The other thing you mentioned, data collection. What are you collecting exactly? And is
So,
this anything you're going to be sharing with
yes.
us?
So I think probably around December we'll have a really good idea on how it's going. Right? I mean, we'll have been implementing for nearly a semester. We're also going to be hearing later today from Rosalie a little bit of information about a program called Panorama, which gives us a whole suite of tools for surveys, particularly SEL surveys. And that's going to play an important role not only in the strategic plan data collection, But for example, we could be asking parents, I took a survey actually that was sent from a parent in the community about parents' perceptions on cell phones in school, right? So there's opportunities for us to gather, what do students think about it? What do teachers think about it? What do our parents think about it? And we'll be collecting data like that to be able to come back, because we obviously have the big kahuna, which is to determine what's it gonna look like at the high school. And I've talked with Mrs. Carter, and she's fully on board with, you know, doing something, understanding the ramifications of the book. And I think what that looks like is gonna have to come back before this board to talk about what that plan looks like. So we'll have to have some data to be able to say, this is what we found, this is what we saw in terms of engagement. And certainly we'll have, you know, assessment data that we, you know, have a lot of that data, but I think more importantly is going to be the experience from a teacher, student, and parent lens, and how that manifests as we do this plan. And we'll bring all that before we would recommend a plan for the whole district, right?
Will we also be implementing or looking into implementing some of the other suggestions from the book regarding recess time and playtime and some of those other things that we have opportunity to try to improve even before the kids get posted?
Yeah, so the book really speaks about a lot of different things. I'd say the two primary themes, one is the, you know, certainly what social media and technology has done to mental health for adolescents, but another huge component of the book is the rise of hyperactive parenting and what that's led to in the loss of autonomy and free play in young people and the opportunities to do those things. And so that is something that we absolutely are going to be looking at. I know that in many of the conversations I've had, whether it's with some of you as a board or with staff members, the elementary schedule in particular, especially as we're going into a season like we are with the literacy pilot, it's very difficult to find minutes to do different things with that. But there are some low cost, low you know, stress structure suggestions even in the book, and I think there's even going to be more that come out from our staff as they start to think about how do we allow our young students more opportunities to play in unstructured ways without such rigidity, right? Or the adults in the book, they talk about adults really ruin the fun of play for kids. And I think that we need to think about that, you know, because a lot of times if I'm a teacher, if I'm a principal, I'm thinking, you need to share, and I'm gonna put up the 50 rules, and everybody's gotta follow the rules, and we certainly need to teach kids how to interact with each other, but those are also those social hierarchies and those developmental social skills that they gain from some of those experiences we can build in and be thoughtful and more mindful of that. So whether that's before school or after school recess opportunities, things like that, which I know you've mentioned as well. So I think there's going to be a number of suggestions. It's all just a matter of kind of bringing people along, right? I think this is a good step. And then as we continue to have discussions about it, one of the exciting things, the Novi Mental Health Alliance is going to be really centering their themes on this text, which will allow for more community opportunities. I know Rosalie has talked about the Cook Center. There's a lot of opportunities for tie-in to these principles where parents can get training, parents can get resources. And, you know, I think there's going to be more and more ideas that are probably going to come at us faster than we can even implement them over the course of the next year, which is a good thing. So.
Any other questions, Mr. Mack?
One other quick one. Do the pouches go with the student home, or do they get put in a bin and then they get a random pouch again at the beginning of the next day?
Yeah, so they're going to be barcoded, and every student will get a pouch, and it'll be theirs to keep. So they take it home with them. We're going to determine after the first year, you know, kind of how are we going to collect the pouches? Does the pouch stay with the student? You know, similar to like a Chromebook, you know, how long does the pouch last and stay with the student and still be viable? But it will go home with the student, and so there'll be locking mechanisms and unlocking mechanisms, I should say, at all of the exits. The implementation team from Yonder actually says it speeds up the dismissal process, which will make transportation department, Mrs. Valentine, very happy, because the kids are so excited to get to the exit to get that thing unlocked that they're like, well, I'm already here, I'm ready to go out, you know, to the bus. So it's going to be really interesting to see how some of those things get navigated, but they will take it home with them. And, you know, we have some internal, there's a lot of logistics, which I'll talk about at the town hall and things like that, but how do I unlock my pouch if my kid comes home and actually locks it? You know, we talked about having one that's actually outside of a building somewhere that, you know, could, you know, come back, you know.
I know my kid would be throwing my phone in there.
Exactly, yeah, for
See how
sure.
it goes, Dad.
So, yeah, yeah, so there's a lot of those things, and, you know, students are gonna absolutely find ways to get around it, if you will.
Sure.
But I think that the philosophy and the intent is pure, and, you know, we'll work through, you know, some of those challenges, so, yeah.
Yeah, I asked my high schooler what he thought about this, and he's very astute in some areas. And he says if it's something that affects multiple kids in there, I'm all for it. But if it's only because it affects me, give me the choice. So I'm for this. I think you know, a lot of the information in the book is kind of indisputable. Because nobody really comes out and says, oh, no, screen time is great for kids. I've yet to see that somebody come up with that study. But it's, you know, we're gonna rely on existing policies that we have right now. As this pilot goes along, we've got some ideas of what we're measuring for the success or failure of the pilot before we go on and expand it, or we can also recommend different policy or policy
Absolutely.
changes.
Or a different program.
As it goes along, so. Yeah, my only concern is when my younger kid throws my phone in there and locks it off.
That's a parenting issue.
So, yeah, at the end, I mean, obviously, this is a pilot, right? And the big implementation is if we move forward and implement this in high school. But I would like to find out later, as you start collecting your data, how this works out, and maybe compare that to how the non-locking signal blocking technology compares.
Good point.
Like I said, there's the one school out in Las Vegas that's using that one. I can think of positive and negatives for both, so.
Sure.
So it'd be interesting to see how they compare.
I think most kids might just turn their phone off and put it in the couch so that the battery is still good to go when they get to the bus and play on their phones. At least I know when my kids have had where they keep them in their backpacks, they always turn it off during the day and then back on so that they can use the battery to your phones.
Yes, good point.
And those kids that run out of the building and forget to unlock their pouches will learn that their parents aren't necessarily gonna drive them back to unlock it.
Right.
We'll talk about that part too, and we're gonna come up with solutions to like all of those kind of questions, so as they come up, right, parents can let us know if they're wondering, and I'm sure you've already kind of got a plan for most of these things.
Yeah,
And
we think
adequately
we've got.
answered all of the 100 questions I threw your way.
Yeah, we have a lot of answers to a number of the questions, and there's also questions that we don't have answers to until we get into it and really try it. But I think the idea is to keep an open mind, right? And this is something that will be new for everybody, but I think it's kind of cool that we're doing it as a district, as a community. And as you stated, you know, it'll give us an opportunity to work together on something, and you know, I think it'll be important to bring everybody along.
Okay. Unlock them as they get off the bus, how's that?
There you go.
Okay, so, did we have a motion on that?
We do, yes.
So we have a motion on that. We will call to questions if we have no more questions. We'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? This is 5-0. This brings us to our bus purchase approval. Mr. Mike.
Thank you. So we have convened a pair of ad hoc transportation committee meetings, and appreciate Mr. Kling, and I know Mrs. Valentine has been involved in the meetings related to really getting an idea of where the board wants to go related to the purchasing of buses, because over the past several years we've been purchasing gas buses. We know that we are going to be on the advent of seeing the electric bus fleets come into play. And that infrastructure is rapidly emerging, but probably it's going to need to be a decision about, for our district here in Novi, we probably shouldn't be looking at multiple powertrains in terms of having diesel buses, gas buses, electric buses. And so the purpose of the committee was really to kind of look at some comparisons of where we want to go. So I'll let Mr. Kling and Ms. Valentine certainly can answer questions tonight. I also know that the members of the Transportation Committee, both of you are on the committee, can speak to the discussions, but basically for the community's sake, we did talk about the infrastructure and really continue to explore the infrastructure for electric and what that's going to look like in terms of charging stations and how much power we're going to need to do that. Lifespan, one of the advantages we have is that some of these buses are coming online now, so we'll get some data on, you know, longevity and use and repair and those types of things. We also discussed the fact that our district, being as compact as it is an ideal use case for an electric bus, but also that is, you know, the infrastructure is not here presently, but that's not going to be too far into the future. So with that in mind, really looking at consolidating our efforts around gas buses. And it just so happens that we have a bus purchase schedule and we're a little bit behind and we need to kind of get caught back up. And so we have 4 Bluebird school buses that are needing to be replaced. And so we're proposing tonight that we acquire 4 buses from Holland Bus Company. The cost of the regular passenger bus from Holland is $137,975, resulting with the 4 buses $551,900, and those will be drawn from the 2019 bond fund. As you know, in our district, we allocate bond capital project funds to be able to purchase our buses. So that recommendation is there for you this evening.
Okay, your recommendation, Mr. Missioner.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education award the purchase of 4 buses from Holland Bus Company for a total cost of $551,900. Further, that the Assistant Superintendent of Bus Business and Operations be authorized to expend the funds from the 2019 Capital Projects Bond Fund.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Mrs. Beaudoin. Any comments, questions? Mr. Mitchner.
Yeah, I just, to kind of summarize what the committee focused in on once we kind of did a general overview is right now we have an immediate need to replace buses that won't be able to be serviceable for the upcoming school year. Given the fact that electric still needs a little bit of time, it's probably ready now, but the backlog to even order and acquire an electric bus is probably over a year. So given the district's immediate need, we kind of thought electric is a good thing to continue investigating as a committee, but we needed to quickly make a decision on what internal combustion engine we would consolidate our fleet around going forward, be it diesel or gas. And the biggest factor was which makes the most sense for our district. And it turns out that diesel over the years, because of emissions regulation and emissions restrictions on the engine, has become considerably less fuel efficient to the point where diesel and gas are about equivalent. And then you look at diesel prices are usually a little bit higher than gas prices, plus you have the DEF fluid that you need to buy as well, so it actually is more expensive to own, operate, and run a fleet of diesel buses. So we made a decision, and this is why all the buses are gas in this purchase order. We feel like it would be in the district's best interest to consolidate around a gas powertrain. Also would be common with all our maintenance vehicles. And when electric is ready, we would then replace and augment the fleet with electric.
Or consider replacing.
Yes.
That discussion.
That discussion still needs to be had.
Still ongoing.
But it's probably inevitable with the current emission standards that are out there, that we're gonna have to do something like that, and it's may require a bond of its own, I don't know. But it's not gonna be cheap, it's not gonna be easy to do, and it's not gonna be, quick. So, in the meantime, as we refresh the fleet, to refresh it with the, gas buses, and, it makes, the data is pointing in that direction, so. Mrs. Baudouin.
When is the next time we would be looking at purchasing additional buses?
We were on an annual basis.
Typically, you purchase every year.
How many buses do we have approximately?
Well,
39. 30, so that's probably a pretty precise number. Okay, so then, do the buses last that long? Like, do we expect these will be good for like 4 years?
No.
No, okay, because that seems,
No,
The
but
body
they
goes
do last a
first,
good amount. They actually rust before the engine
yeah, so I'm
goes.
trying to understand. So, like, how frequently do we, like, how long do we expect these to last?
It's about,
An average of 10 years.
Okay,
And that's why you make a purchase every year.
so we're buying 4. And
Yeah,
if
so
we
you're
were buying
buying-
like 4 per year.
Yeah,
it would be
instead
like
of the whole
40
fleet
over
at
10
once.
years?
Yep, you got it.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Not 40 years, but 10. No, the diesel buses have lasted and the bodies have rusted out on the diesel buses. We're still waiting on the gas buses, but to find out what's gonna happen there. Any other questions, comments? I'd like to thank Mrs. Valentine and Devin on all the work they did, bringing all this information to us, and you probably have the toughest two people to convince on something there. So, because, both of us are very data-driven, and it was a lot of digging you had to do to get some of that information, so. We appreciate the work you did in getting all that for us, so we could come to a decision, so, come to a recommendation. So with that being said, no other questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. This brings us to our NCSD 2024-2027 strategic plan approval.
Alrighty. Do you want to make a motion before I do the presentation, or would you like me to do it before?
I will probably forget the motion was made before.
Okay, okay. All right. I'm happy to do the presentation, and Mrs. Holly can pull that up. So I appreciate all of your patience as well as input into this process. As you recall, and I'll go through a little bit of a timeline here. In the fall of '23, we really began establishing parameters for the strategic plan, how we would like to structure it. Everyone here was a part of that. But at the time, we also conducted a lot of staff, student, and community surveys. We had well over 800 people that participated in providing input, whether that was through focus groups, surveys, targeted focus groups that we would ask different questions to, parent advisory committees. We took that data and provided it. You'll probably recall you had about 6 meetings specifically, related to some form or another of the strategic plan. The first thing we did is we really said, what do we value in our district? What do we feel like we need to address? And so we looked at our vision and our mission and our values. That had not been updated in quite some time, and so we used it as an opportunity to get that information. We also looked at the graduate profile, and the graduate profile is something the district hasn't had before, but really kind of thinking about where are our kids going to be when they graduate, and what competencies do we want them to have. And so we established what was called a profile of a graduate, which I'm going to go into here in just a second. The leadership team then took the focus areas and goals that the board had essentially established, and we went to work and determined the strategies and activities we would do to meet those goals, and what the measures of success would be. We presented it for information to discussion in June, and they're here for your consideration of adoption today. So from a definitions perspective, I like to just kind of make sure we're getting clarity on what those things are. So our core values are the priorities that outline the traits that guide how we act within the organization. So how do we behave with each other? How do we behave towards other stakeholders? And so those core values kind of make up the DNA of our foundation. The vision statement then is a very brief statement of what we aspire to be. It's kind of what we hope to become. And then our mission statement is what we do to achieve the vision. The graduate profile is that set of competencies that we hope that all graduates will possess before leaving our school community and go out into the world. So we talked about in our meetings what would be a hallmark of a Novi graduate, and those are where those 6 competencies. And it's going to be kind of a cool tie-in to Novi, being that there happens to be 6 of them. But I'll start with our core mission, vision, and values. So this document right here outlines our core values, which are excellence, equity, kindness, empathy, and curiosity. And then provides our vision statement, which is limitless potential, excellence and equity in education, leadership and learning, and constant curiosity. And then the mission statement there, empowering every student to reach the pinnacle of their potential, the Novi Community School District unites rigorous academics, whole person development, and trailblazing innovation. We work to unlock the unique genius in each child, preparing them to excel, empathetically lead, and innovate in a global society. That took quite a bit of crafting. If you recall, we spent about an hour and 45 minutes alone on just that statement. But I think that this really does embody not only the values for the district, what our community believes about our school district, what our students aspire to do, and continue to lead and excel. So this is kind of our foundational document here in terms of our vision, mission, and values. The graduate profile, lists those 6 traits that we hope kids will be able to develop over the 13-year journey that they're with us in school. This is going to be hard to read, but I'm going to kind of go to the quick graphic, which is a little bit easier. It's actually on the back of your placemats, and appreciate Mrs. Holly laminating, a little placemat that you can have in front of you at the board meetings. But we did a little bit of a play on the Novi train story, right? So you got the train tracks there. You'll also notice that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And you'll also notice that all 6 of those graduate profile traits, Novi was the fable, I believe it's a fable, but was the 6th train stop, coming out of Detroit. So the number 6 is how Novi got its name. So being an effective communicator, being a curious innovator, a problem solver, a creative critical thinker, an empathetic collaborator, and a purpose seeker are things that we hope that all of our students over the journey of 13 years will develop in terms of competencies. And so we have some ideas on how we're going to be able to build some of that agency in our kids and how that will look. So this is something that gives us a little bit of an idea of how we can kind of build and program around some of those things. So an example would be we're probably not going to be looking at approving curriculum or recommending curriculum that is not going to embody these traits. And I believe that what you're going to see from what Rosalie presents in a little bit, you're going to see a lot of connection and tie-in. The strategic plan then is that's kind of the, what we're focused on, right? These are the focus areas and the goals that the board has kind of established for the district. It's again on your desk here, but innovative academics is the first focus area. Staff support is the second one. Wellness is number 3. Student passions and interests are number 4. And financial and infrastructure management is number 5. When we've sat down and created goals, the board had recommended over 35 goals. I think there was 37. And that becomes a little unwieldy, but we were able to successfully narrow it down. I believe Trustee Ruskin, Dr. Ruskin had mushrooms or umbrellas that were on the screen, if you remember back to that point. So, but the idea was that really in a district our size, with all of the complexities of the things that we do, whether that be from transportation, which we just talked about, and all of the infrastructure in our facilities, to the way that we're teaching kids, our most important thing that we do. But then how do we support our staff, and how do we maintain a focus on wellness? it's very difficult to just have one or two goals because we have so many areas in the complex organization that we have. Now, not every single staff member is going to be working on every one of these goals. We know that, and we can kind of tie that out. But certainly, these 5 focus areas give us a really nice strategic direction for the next 3 years. One of the things we did when we took those focus areas and goals, and I know you have access to the whole plan, which will be published in the minutes, and anyone that's interested in the community can take a look at the 13-page document that includes our strategies and activities, as well as our measures of success. Each area, each goal has strategies and activities accompanied by measures of success. And so the cool thing about that is that we're tying out, and we have about 54 data points that we're going to look at in terms of measures of success on our district scorecard, which will allow us, similar to the way that we look at iReady data, you'll be able to start to see, what areas might be red, what areas might be yellow, what areas might be green, right? And start to be able to look at how we're doing, in progress of our goals, of our 12 goal statements. So this gets into the weeds. There's probably not a lot of people that are going to be real interested in this, but I think it's important for us internally as a district to be able to see what those data points that we're going to be collecting and looking at. The final document is the one that's on the placemat in front of you, and it's just kind of a nice way to visualize our vision, mission, values on one side of the dial, and then the strategic plan, goals, and focus areas on the other side of the dial. So for the most people, if they would ask, what's our strategic plan? I would really, point to this graphic or this image, understanding that it's actually more like 13 pages, which is going to be getting into more of the detail and those scorecards and things like that. But this plan right here, I believe, is going to give us an opportunity to have a strategic direction. It does embody a lot of the work that's been discussed, not only at this table, but within the district. And I think it's going to be really a great opportunity for us to get into this, see where it needs to be tweaked over the next few years, and then hopefully by the time we start sitting down in 2027, we'll have a really good idea on this process and how we need to adapt it and modify it to make the plan even better at that time. But thank you for your work on this. I know there was a lot of work in the fall. Sorry it took a little bit to kind of pull it to culmination, but the goal is for this to be in front of you for approval tonight so that we can start communicating it, especially in the fall when we bring everybody back to school.
Thank you. Do we have any, can we have a motion?
Yes.
Dr. Ruskin.
That the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the 2024 through 2027 strategic plan as presented.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Ruskin, supported by Mr. Mitchner. Do we have any additional questions? Mushroom seances?
It's very funny you say that because hindsight's 20/20, and I'm like, why did I do umbrellas? I should have done buckets.
Yeah.
Can you draw?
Maybe I just couldn't draw them.
It must be. Buckets would have made more sense.
An art teacher probably should have been there to help us
Yes,
out.
exactly.
But there was a lot of work that went into this. And I'm really happy with where we turned out. We've got a lot of things on here, but it's a complex district, and hopefully, our policies, our planning from now on has a methodology to it, and it's not just throwing things at the wall and hoping they'll stick. So appreciate your guidance through this. Appreciate the board for all their hard work and discussions, and next time you'll keep the class clown out of there. So.
Too many classes.
If a community member would like to see this in more detail, will we have this up on our website?
Yep. Yeah. So once you approve it, we'll work on getting it on the website. We'll certainly have, like this document and this, grad profile available, but we will also put the full plan on there so that people can see the detail if they're interested.
Thank you.
Mrs. Beaudoin.
I just wanted to echo your comments, Mr. Cook. I'm happy with how this has turned out. But I think aside from having these really fun graphics and this excellent plan, one thing I feel like this really did for us was, I feel like it really brought our board together and helped us really get a good sense of what things matter to each of us individually and how very frequently those goals align. And it was, for me, it was a really wonderful experience, and I'm very thankful for it, because I think seeing, you know, okay, we might not all agree exactly the exact path of the way we get to a thing, but we all kind of want to go to the same place, right? So I think it opened up a lot of dialogue for all of us, and it's been, I think it's just a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you.
Mr. Mitchell.
I just want to say this was a great exercise. I'm so glad that we're hopefully bringing it to fruition in a few seconds. And I think it's really important that we have something that we can all refer together to give us a common purpose and consistency in our decision-making process. And I think that'll just continue to help the school district really thrive. So thanks for getting this process started.
Thank you.
And I will say that the last time we did this, we were promised placemats. We finally got them.
Yeah. You're going to get more permanent ones, but this is a start. That's great.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Which brings us to our information and discussion section. Positivity Project Plan discussion.
Excellent. So we came to you about a year ago now, and we talked about our Whole Child Initiative. And as a part of that, we discussed our character education program, which was not in existence. We don't have one of those. And that was something that we felt was a missing piece. More importantly, the inconsistency with our social emotional learning programs. We have successfully implemented and have had for a number of years the Second Step program in elementary school. And that has been very, very helpful with our social workers being able to do some of those lessons with our kids. But we haven't had a through line for social emotional learning across the whole district that ties in character ed, PBIS, and I want to be careful that I clarify, we have PBIS structures in our buildings which are encouraged so that each individual building has a bit of an identity. But Positivity Project provides an umbrella that gives us an opportunity to talk about really important traits that we're building positive relationships within our kids. So I'm really excited to hear from Rosalie tonight, our Director of Mental Health and Wellness, and she will come provide a presentation on the Positivity Project and our hopes for your approval of it at the next meeting. So I'll turn it over to Rosalie.
Thank you. All right, good evening. I'm going to jump right into presenting some information and discussion about the Positivity Project. So this very busy slide is just to give you a brief overview, which Mr. Micah kind of already did. So last spring / summer, the Teaching Learning Department, in collaboration with Mr. Micah, really cast a wide network and looked at a variety of resources, came to the conclusion that the Positivity Project was the best fit for the Novi Community School District for a number of reasons. And it really supports the Whole Child Initiative that Novi Community School District is ensuring that we make a big part of our program. There was a presentation done by Andy Cohn from the Teaching Learning Department where we highlighted the 5 elements of the Whole Child Initiative and really outlined, again, how Positivity Project fills a void with character development and also supports all of the other elements of the Whole Child Initiative. So kind of progressing in our timeline, I came on board in November and really started this data collection mission where I was getting into buildings, meeting with different stakeholders, learning about all of the great things happening to support mental health and wellness, learning about our PBIS structures. And the decision was made to really kind of press pause on a mid-year implementation of Positivity Project this last school year because we want to make sure we had a really thoughtful implementation plan that was strategic and intentional and didn't overwhelm our educators. So then I jumped into really the planning process. I've been meeting with key stakeholders, meeting with building administration, meeting with Positivity Project, and exploring multiple implementation plans. So I'm excited to present one of those plans to you this evening for your consideration. So just as an overview, again, I know this is not the first time this has come before you, but for anyone who is watching as part of the community, what is Positivity Project? It really is this character development and social emotional curriculum that is dedicated to empowering our youth and building character strengths, 24 to be exact. So why Positivity Project? Why is this important to what work we are doing as a school district and community? As mentioned, we believe in this whole child initiative. We know that rigorous academics are an important part of what we do as educators, and we know that tending to the needs of social emotional learning, physical health, executive functioning, et cetera, are really important. You just saw and were part of the work of the profile of a graduate, and this very easily connects to that work. This supports that work. The traits that were outlined in that profile of a graduate, many of them overlap with our character strengths. Something that I've also talked about in previous presentations to all of you is just the state that we are in with our youth. We know that we are in a youth mental health crisis. We've talked about the anxious generation. We've talked about the impact of social media, the increase in loneliness, the decrease in empathy, and all of the ways in which that impacts our youth. And so Positivity Project is an innovative way to address those concerns. It also provides our educators with a strong Tier 1 foundation and additional resources to support Tier 2 and Tier 3. It is an evidence-based, research-based program that has proven to improve student behavior, enhance our culture, and embed academic vocabulary K-12. And so there's a lot of power in having this universal language that we'll utilize as a school district. So how does it do all of this? It partners with our educators to equip us with resources, strategies, and training to teach positive psychology's 24 character strengths with a focus on relationships. They have a plethora of resources available to our educators, including Tier 1 lessons that are based on those character strengths. They have added to their resources. They have Tier 2 and Tier 3 resources that are really focused on that social emotional learning piece and specifically targeting things like anxiety. They have resources for our families, morning announcement script, project-based learning. They have courses for middle school and high school electives if we choose to explore those courses. Lots and lots of different materials, and they pride themselves on these materials being easy to use with minimal teacher prep and being able to seamlessly really be integrated into the day-to-day. I've included in this presentation some visuals of those resources. I'm not going to speak to them tonight, but I included them just so you could kind of get a little bit of a flavor of what those resources might look like, including that personalized calendar that ultimately we would follow as a district. So again, when I talk about that common vocabulary, as an entire school district, we have the opportunity to be focused on a character strength at a specified time all together. And so there's a lot of power in building that universal language and understanding. It is aligned to Michigan standards and the CASEL framework. There are lots of differentiated resources that are grade level and developmentally appropriate. And some great family resources so we can really build a positive home to school collaborative experience. And so parents have the language as well that they are able to reinforce at home. I am presenting tonight a 3-year implementation plan. So this upcoming school year, the 24-25 school year, would include a level 1 training for our admin and our student success coaches. We would then, pending board approval, present an overview to all of our staff. And then the resource expectation for this first year would be that the resources are available but not mandatory for staff to use. And that's very intentional. We want to really have staff buy-in, and we want to honor the fact that there are several initiatives happening right now, including the K-4 literacy lift. And so we have some educators who are excited and ready for these resources, and so they'll have access to them, and we know that we have some educators who might need to go a little bit slower based on all of the other initiatives that are happening. So again, wouldn't be mandated, but would be available. And then simultaneously, I would be having conversations with our administrative teams this year, continued conversations about, again, how Positivity Project really works in tandem with the PBIS models that are present at each school, and how it can be used to bolster the work that's already being done and honor the work that's already being done. We also would have a lot of district communication about the Positivity Project in this upcoming school year so that our families are familiar with this initiative, very strategically working with the Mental Health Alliance to create an engaging parent series, as mentioned. And so we are talking about actually at our parent camp, including a P2 speaker to come in and have that FaceTime with our parents. So that would be year one. Year two implementation, we would anticipate moving forward with a full implementation. Resources would be taught explicitly, tier one resources at all levels. Again, that could look like daily morning meetings at the elementary level and conversations with admin about the secondary level and what that looks like, advisory periods, elective courses, et cetera. We also would have some conversations about branding and what that might look like. How do we really make Positivity Project a part of our culture and the work that we're doing through signage and potentially murals, and like really thinking about how we brand that for us. And then we would have not only district level communication, but building communication and family engagement events around the character strengths and work that we can do to collectively and intentionally build strong relationships. And year three, we would be full implementation. The hope would be that this is really becoming a part of our culture and the work that we're doing. And we would really be able to start digging into some of the more specific resources like opportunities for service-based learning or Positivity Project clubs, Positivity Project assemblies, parent events where we're inviting our families to come in and really collaborate and learn about the character strengths as a community. So this is the intention of my recommendation for a 3-year implementation plan for the Positivity Project. And just to conclude this portion, I love this quote. Positivity Project, by the way, often is referred to as P2. So P2 is an upstream approach to building positive culture through a focus on character and relationships. It is really about being proactive rather than reactive and developing the individual and collective habits for our students and our staff. So with that, are there questions that I might answer about the Positivity Project?
Mr. Mitchner.
So basically, year one's like a soft launch, year two is the real deal, and then year three, we move into the maintenance phase. Is that pretty much how it goes?
Yes, and within year three, I think really digging into even the more specific resources that they have and exploring some other opportunities like offering maybe a P2 club or having an elective course. So really, yes, maintenance and seeing if we can dig a little bit deeper.
And then one other question.
Yeah.
How do you see this coming alongside the individual PBIS systems that the different buildings have been implementing?
Great question. So we know that that really serves as a foundation at each building. The beautiful thing about Positivity Project is it's not intended to replace that. It really is intended to bolster that work that's already been done. So when we think about, some of our acronyms, I had to write one down like PAWS, right? Novi Woods, PAWS, practice kindness. Well, kindness is a character strength that we can incorporate into that work. Act safely. Okay, we can learn about the character strength of self-control and how self-control helps us to act in a safe manner across various settings. So it really, the character strengths bolster the work that's already being done and work in tandem with the PBIS models.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
The other thing that has come up is we have advisory periods, 5th through 12th grade. And really the initial launch and intent was that advisory was going to be an opportunity to do things like this, but there was never a resource for anybody to do anything with that. So the teachers were left to, they're really kind of like, this would be the place they could insert. They have ready-made, off-the-shelf, 10-minute conversation starters, and activities they can do all the way through 12th grade. And so we think that there's a really ease of just providing the resource in this first year. We think there's actually quite a few teachers that will be like, oh, well, this resource is what I've needed. This is great. I can use this, and start to dip their toes in it and, have some early adopters as well.
And is this because I saw some tier 1, 2, and 3 stuff. is this going to supplement or be more of a replacement for the current MTSS system?
So it would not be, so this really serves as a tier one and resource, which we primarily as a tier one resource, which we don't really have a robust tier one resource right now that's being used. As mentioned, we do have Second Step. Our social workers use Second Step for social emotional learning. This would not replace that. Positivity Project does have tier 2 and tier 3 resources, so it really is just building a repository of resources rather than replacing. So, and actually the next presentation is going to continue to build upon those resources. I talk about Panorama, so we really are working to equip our educators with as many resources as possible to ensure that they are, again, at tier 1 level being proactive, and then at that tier 2 and tier 3 level have the resources needed to really fill gaps and address specific concerns.
Mrs. Bowdoin.
Can you speak a little bit to how this works with different cultures? Because you're such a diverse district, that's always a concern when we look at programs like this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that that's something that we can, you know, when we talk about positive psychology and the 24 character strengths, the idea is that we all possess these 24 character strengths. It's something that unites us. It, you know, different cultures might experience those character strengths a little bit differently, but we, at the end of the day, all possess these 24 character strengths. And so Positivity Project really talks about how each strength is on a continuum and how as we grow and develop into the best version of ourselves, we make adjustments and learn how to really balance those character strengths. And so I think it actually could serve to unite us because it's universal. I think as we get into more specifics of like implementation and parent communication, we can have some discussions about how we might be able to most effectively communicate about the resources and make sure that we have the buy-in from our key stakeholder groups. And so that's part of the benefit of the soft rollout is really like bringing in some of those key stakeholders to talk about how do we get this in front of parents and families in a way that really honors their culture. But again, if you think about the character strengths, it's about perspective. It's about really considering and being empathetic to the different perspectives and cultures and opinions. I think it's timely as we enter November and, you know, the political climate amps up a little bit. This is really timely as we really focus on the importance of relationships and seeing the good in others. It is about the other people matter mindset is really the motto of the Positivity Project. So seeing character strengths within ourselves and also identifying the strengths that others bring and the diverse strengths that others bring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question? Mr. Miller?
A question, comment. We first heard about this when you gave your presentation during your interview here at the district. So now, a few years later, looks like there's still a lot of enthusiasm behind this thing. So it's nice to see that we're following through with this and finally bringing it to work.
Yeah, so it's entirely different than when I experienced it as a superintendent in a previous district because the resources, the support, you know, Rosalie's much more well-versed than I am in the program, but what it has become is just full scale, even more robust than it was, and they've had a lot of traction, which I think is really, really good. But yeah, it's definitely, at the time, I didn't know that we didn't have a tier 1 resource like that, but I definitely see it as a gap and something that can help connect a lot of the pieces that we're talking about, particularly what you're going to hear about in Panorama, but also our social emotional learning and mental health areas that we're trying to address on the whole child.
Okay. This is my turn. My typical question. How are we going to know this is a success? Or these resources are of value to us and not just, you know, something that's going to be collecting dust or using up pixels on a computer screen?
Yeah, great question. So again, I think that is part of the intention behind this slower rollout is to have some really strategic conversations with our admin part of making sure that we are successful in this rollout is to ensure that we have buy-in and that we have leadership in each building. So I have 2 student success coaches who have stuck around for this board meeting because our student success coaches are really going to help lead this work to ensure that there is consistent rollout, that staff feel supported in the rollout. I'm going to present on Panorama next, and I know we keep referencing Panorama. This is really going to be an important tool for us to collect data and measure growth over time. And so we can actually choose our competencies that we're going to measure. And so one of those competencies can be relationships. And so we can measure growth over time about the impact that we are having through the use of Positivity Project and the impact that that's making over time with in terms of relationships. I do think we will can expect some qualitative observational data to come in, and the hope, and in my experience, I'll actually step aside from Novi for a second. In my previous role as a principal, the Positivity Project was something I implemented in my building in the second year that I was there, and it completely changed the culture of my building to the point where bus drivers would say, we prefer the route to Glengarry because something's different at Glengarry. What are you doing? The students are different there. They are really focused on character, and they're focused on manners and finding strengths in other people. I mean, it was evident to parents and to community members. And so I think you'll start to hear that and see that as well. Teachers are hungry and asking for resources. We know that there is a shift in, again, the needs of our students. We have teachers who are addressing behaviors that they've never seen before, and addressing things, again, as we go into this politically charged time, where there is a need for us to really empower students with the language and build their capacity to really embrace perspective and change and all of those things. So long answer to your question, I apologize, but I think we'll have the quantitative but also the qualitative data that will come in.
So are we collecting data now so we have a baseline to know where we're starting?
So I would say baseline would be like we can look at anything from the number of referrals and suspensions that we have right now, right? Like, so really collecting some of our discipline data right now and looking at what that has looked like this year as a baseline, and we can use that just as a reference point to see the change over time there.
So we're not planning on doing any preliminary surveys or anything on kids?
So I would say when I present next on Panorama, we will have our first survey pending your approval in October, which will provide us with some really nice baseline data.
Mr. Missioner.
One more question on cost, and just as a baseline or a frame of reference for myself, I think the last maybe tier 1 district program we had was the 7 Habits. How does the cost of this program compare to that?
It's a small fraction of the cost. So in a previous district, and I know here as well, they had a program that was, I won't name the name just because it's an open meeting, but I think it was about $35K a building. So you can see this is substantially lower than that as you consider it a 3-year contract. So
I think the cost per building is roughly $4,000.
yes, per year. Yeah, per year. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mrs. Beaudoin.
As we talk about the yonder couches and some of the other ideas you and I had discussed from that Anxious Generation book, and how those things are implemented, I'm kind of wondering if we have, and this is probably more of a thing you'll have to then just consider, is if we'll be able to kind of distinguish the impacts of the different programs. And I am not a particularly science-minded human, but to me, if we're changing 2 factors at the same time, that's going to be difficult to tell. This is the results of removing some of these phones and some of, more of that, encouraging more free play and all those things. Or is this like this program? So I'm excited to see that there's kind of that soft launch happening, because that might give us a little more information on how the phone situation is impacting things. So would you be able to maybe track like how it's being used in different buildings as well? So, you know, like which teachers are implementing it and like kind of just generally to what extent? Because I think I would be curious at the end of the year to see if places where this is being implemented, if we have, you know, an amplified impact or if it's the phones or this, or, you know, like, because there's so many factors. And of course, there's never like one thing that fixes all of it, but I think it would be interesting for me to see.
I think it's a really good question, and you're actually 100% correct on the fact that it's very difficult in education, and I think sometimes it's difficult, I know from some of you, with some of the conversations we've had as a board, you know, I want to attribute causality to this thing, so I did this thing, and so much of what we do is not done in a controlled environment, right? Like, we have so many more variables that are outside of our control. I guess one analogy I might give is, if you went to the doctor and the doctor said, you know, you need, and if the doctor told me I needed to lose weight, I would say, okay, well, what do I need to do? And he said, we need to eat more vegetables. And so if I ate only vegetables and I lost weight, I could say, okay, well, that might be why it is. Well, if I ate fruits and vegetables and I cut out my other refined sugars, I'd probably also lose weight. So in the end, the goal is that we're going to be improving mental health, we're going to be improving relationships, we're going to be improving those things. So it may be difficult, not impossible, but difficult in some ways to pinpoint, man, we did the phone pouches, we did these other things. But what we know is that in isolation, the data supports those initiatives in mass, right? So if I'm going to eat a bunch of vegetables and I'm going to eat a bunch of fruits and I'm going to lose weight and it's going to be really healthy for me, then that's a good thing. So it's like, I think we will be able to get some data out of Panorama that might isolate some of it, but it is going to be difficult because what we're doing is we're saying these are good things that are related, that are going to help our kids and their mental health and their development, and it might not always be easy to parse it out. But I think you raise a good question, right?
So from the book that we all just read, and I'm sorry to keep referencing it because I did find it to be quite brilliant. They talked about that Polynesian saying, standing on a whale fishing through the nose. And that was in my mind as we're looking at this as like, do we know what is the whale and what are the minnows when we're looking at solving these problems? And so, I mean, it's quite possible that all of these things collectively create a space where now we are having greater success. And it's not that we necessarily need to know exactly which ones are working, which ones are not, because I don't think there's any harm in this. You know, like, I don't think there would be any harm here if it was not the thing that solves all the problems. But what I'm wondering is just, how do we explain them to our community as we roll out more of these initiatives, or even like with the phone thing, I feel like we need support in what we're seeing in our buildings in order to continue to, you know, do this, because I do think it's going to be a little bit tricky for some people. So that's, I guess, kind of more what I'm, not that I need you to prove to me which is fixing what problems and whatnot, but just the idea of, as we look at like collective buy-in and all of these things from the higher level, I want to make sure we have a good way to indicate to our families why these things are worth their effort. That makes sense.
Mr. Commissioner.
So I'm excited because I've been waiting to do this. So we just approved our strategic plan and now we can do this. Watch this. So wellness, goals 1 and 3 have the positivity project listed under strategies and activities. And so part of the measures associated with goals 1 and 3 of wellness, we'll be able to see the measures of success, and one of the enablers is the positivity project. So we will be able to kind of judge the impact of this based on a goal that we've established as a board, executed by the administration based on their measures of success that they've set for themselves, using something that we will hopefully approve in the near future. And so now we have this structure in place and we can do exactly what you just mentioned, so. I love how we could use this like 5 minutes after approving the plan.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. This brings up Panorama.
Panorama.
You don't have to sit down, you can go ahead and go right into Panorama.
All right. So what is it? Panorama Education is an organization that partners with K-12 schools and districts across the country. It is considered a #1 platform, research-based. It has surveys. It has multiple features, but tonight I'm going to talk to you about 3 features, including surveys, something called Panorama Playbook, which is going to equip educators with resources to respond to the results of the survey. And then Mr. Giramini will join me to talk about the MTSS platform as well. So why Panorama? What is the purpose? Panorama, as stated, has like these 3 components that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. So the first really is this idea of surveys. And so why would we ask for there to be surveys? Why is this something we want to invest in? We really want to elevate the voices of our students, staff, and families and gain their perceptions about social emotional learning, our culture, our climate. This really will serve as a universal screener. So when we're talking about our students, we don't have a universal screener right now where we really are able to identify with quantitative data what are the social and emotional needs of our students. So we know that there might be behaviors, we might know a student is struggling. I can offer my observations, and while there's value to that, it is really helpful to have some actual data. So Panorama gives us that data. It also, as stated, really helps us drive our school improvement and our strategic plan. It allows us to measure change over time and is actually written into the strategic plan as a key measurement tool for many of our goals. Again, it provides educators with strategies that can be implemented at all 3 tiers and really bolsters the MTSS process and has a comprehensive platform that we'll talk about in a little bit. So let's talk about these surveys that we've been referencing all evening. So what's very cool about Panorama is they offer a variety of competencies that we can measure. And so as a school district, we will agree upon 4 to 6 of these competencies that we will measure. We'll administer the survey 2 to 3 times a year, with the first survey happening sometime like mid-October. So what you're seeing in that graphic is all of the competencies that we could choose from. And so when I say we're going to select 4 to 6, this might be the time that we say, okay, we are going to measure sense of belonging, right? Because that's part of our strategic plan. That's a big part of the work that we're doing with Positivity Project, is we want students to really feel like they're part of their community and that they belong and that they matter. So that might be a competency we choose to measure. So for each of those that we select, there are 5 to 8 questions that will be posed to our stakeholder groups, and then we will receive the results as a school district. We'll be able to look at that data. A classroom teacher can look at that data specific to their set of students. A building principal could look at that data and identify trends within their school building. And then as a district, we can look at our district data. Let me think if there's anything else I want to say about the surveys. That really kind of sums up our surveys. We will have a training with Panorama that's part of this partnership, so that as a leadership team, we really understand how to interpret that data and what to do with it. So that would happen after the first administration. So the second big part that I mentioned talking about is Panorama Playbook. So when we look at our data, what does it tell us? What are the trends and how do we drive improvement? And so Panorama Playbook is this unique resource that is essentially a giant digital library. It has over 800 resources, strategies, and interventions that our educators will have access to. What's very cool about Panorama is it pulls the best of the best. So they have strategic alliances with Second Step, with Conscious Discipline, with Everyday Speech, some of the best social and emotional curriculums and resources that are out there. Panorama partners with. And so a teacher could see that they have, 2 students who are really struggling with executive functioning. That came out of the survey. And so then that teacher can say, can filter these resources and say, I have a 2nd grade student struggling with executive functioning, and it's going to pull a repository of 10 resources, say that all have to do with executive functioning. So I can now select this resource, and I have this as a teacher teacher to go pull this small group. Or the social worker might form their social skills group based off this data and actually have lessons and resources that they can pull. So Playbook is a really great resource that we are excited about. And finally, I'm going to invite Mr. Geremini to join me to talk about the MTSS component.
Thank you. So, as Ms. Johnson mentioned, she's really taken a deep dive into this survey platform. And as we started digging into the survey platform and the playbook, what we found is that there is this MTSS component of Panorama that's really pretty impressive. Building on the idea of the whole child. So we talk about these issues of like parsing data. How do we know this is affecting that? How do we know, and we're talking about a system. We're thinking about it often in our classrooms at a kid level. How do we know what's really affecting this kid's ability to be successful? Is it behavior? Is it social emotional learning? Is it their attendance? Or is it purely an academic challenge that the student's experiencing, or some intersection of these various pieces? We don't have all that information in one place. So figuring that out is really difficult. So when we have, unfortunately, a data meeting at this point, we're gathering data from different sources. Some of it's on paper, some of it's in a spreadsheet, some of it's in iReady, some of it's kind of all over the place. And it's really, really challenging. So the idea is, when you go to the doctor with electronic medical records, they have all the pieces about you, right? They have all your vital reports, all the testing they've ever done, and they can click and look. And they can say, I have this question, now I wonder about this, and they click to the next spot. That's what Panorama MTSS does for us in our industry. So it really lets us take this research-based system, which is where we start, MTSS, and make it better. So this is something that we would grow into. So we're really thinking about starting with the Panorama survey and playbook, and then building our capacity toward MTSS. If we bite this off right now, and it's going to be way too much for our teachers to manage. So we have a plan that I'm going to share, another 3-year rollout that Rosalie has helped design, focused on Panorama. Jump for me. So in year 1, we're really focused on, again, initial implementation, training for administration, training for ancillary staff and our student success coaches, and then really just providing our K-12 staff, our comprehensive staff, just an overview, an introduction. Let them know that this is available, make them aware of it. In terms of resources, we would administer the surveys that Rosalie mentioned 2 to 3 times that year for our students, our staff, and our families. And then we would utilize the MTSS platform, really the intervention platform, for our Tier 3 plans. So instead of starting at Tier 1, like we're starting so many things right now, right? We've talked a lot about new Tier 1 stuff. This would start at Tier 3, so that those folks become experts in how to use the platform. So right now we build plans, Tier 3 plans. How are we going to support a student in Tier 3? We build those essentially in Google Docs, right? So it becomes a PDF that somebody then transports manually. Maybe it gets moved digitally, but it's not in one single database, one single place. So they will build their Tier 3 plans inside of Panorama MTSS, and then we will begin the process of exploring Tier 2. How do we bring that down to Tier 2? Now when we're talking about a kid having some additional needs at the classroom level, that's Tier 2. Let's explore how we're going to do that and figure out how we're going to implement it successfully across the district. And then we have to work toward full data integration. So I made it sound pretty easy at the beginning when I said, look, all this data is going to be in one place. Their attendance, their social emotional, all the pieces, one place, super easy, click of a button. It's going to take some back-end work to get it there. So Panorama, you don't put data directly into Panorama. You actually sync with your SIS. In that case, our student information system is PowerSchool. It can also sync with your assessment database, which in this case for us is called DNA. And these are resources that we have. It can sync with iReady. It can sync with state assessment data. And it can pull all that in. We just have to build those, and that's going to take some time to do that effectively. So again, starting slow so that we can make the system better, and by year 3, actually look at full MTSS platform implementation across the district. I don't know if you want to add to the implementation stuff. I kind of jumped over your surveys.
Nope. That was great. I mean, surveys are pretty self-explanatory. The goal is to administer, to choose our competencies and administer that survey 2 to 3 times this year, and really start to measure some areas strategically selected by our leadership that align with all of the work we're doing.
So one of the things that we talk a lot about is, we really like opportunity cost when it comes to, we have multiple, we've talked about this, big rocks, right? We have all these things that we need to get to. It's really difficult to train, implement, onboard for 4 different things, 4 different programs. And so what Panorama does, and what was part of our discussion, we started looking at this last year, actually Dr. Ruskin and I saw it at the national conference. There are tentacles of this that can really address things. Even there's a program that helps high school counselors with transcripts and credit checks, making that digital. We do a lot of things on paper. And so how often we've heard MTSS needs a way to, like, that system needs to be overhauled. That system needs a way to find out where the data is. We also know that we don't have good SEL data collection mechanisms at all. And then how are we going to actually find out how our kids or our parents feel about things? And how are we going to then every year not just have a different survey, have something that we can start to look at longitudinally? We have a data system that we can look at. All of those things this particular program is hitting. So why we feel it's important is because it's giving us a tool to do a lot of different things, and we don't have to train 5 different programs. We're learning one program that can do a lot of different things. So I think that's an important distinction as well.
So I just have a general comment. I went from curious, seeing this thing called Panorama in all our goals, stated as a way to meet some objectives, to intrigued when I saw it was going to be discussed today in the board meeting, to now I'm just ecstatic, because this seems like this is what I was hoping we'd eventually be able to find, that kind of brings everything together, brings a dispository for data so that we all are talking from the same data set. We can see everything across pretty quickly without multiple access and users and manipulation, and that we are addressing some of the weaknesses I think we have in our school systems, not in our personnel, but in the systems that our personnel use to, I think will help make the school even more efficient and more effective. So I'm really ecstatic that you guys found this solution. And even if it, provides half of what we've talked about tonight, I think that'll put us leaps and bounds from where we are today. So this is really fantastic work.
Yeah.
Mrs. Roy.
One of the things I heard regarding these surveys that have been done in the high school this year was that they were extraordinarily lengthy, and that a lot of kids stopped mid-survey and just kind of were done with that. So I wanted to make sure, it sounds like these will be short, but I wanted to just offer my opinion here that more frequent short surveys would be beneficial. Because I feel like, especially when it's super long, by the time they're done answering like the first set of questions, they're annoyed with the survey. And like my child mentioned some of the answers that they put on there, and I was like, that's not how you really think about stuff. Like, I know how you feel about your school and stuff. Like, we've talked about this, but she's like, I don't know, that survey was just really annoying. And by the end, they were just kind of like not into it, right? And she said a lot of the kids kind of stopped the survey, right? So I think that we have to make sure we're not putting the students in a bad mood with the surveys unless we want them to indicate bad mood data. Because teenagers tend to swing pretty quick.
Especially if they don't have their phones.
Yeah. Because like, it just seems like there
Double
should
whammy.
be something happy at the end of this.
Yeah.
Because the overall feedback I heard from more than just my student was that it was like, oh, they're so annoying. So
Yeah. We also heard some of that feedback, and
I
so we'll be
imagine.
following the recommendations that Panorama sets, which is no more than 4 to 6 competencies, because it needs to be a 10 to 15-minute survey. Otherwise, yes, you'll have exactly what you just described.
Okay,
Dr. Ruskin.
I just want to offer kudos to the teaching and learning department. I think that all this stuff is going to be amazing. In 2027, we're going to look at it and say, wow, utilizing all this technology and the platforms that are available. When I saw this in play, I saw like one little tentacle of it, not even the MTSS, but I love the analogy of an EMR, like an electronic medical record of a student. And that is one of the kind of one of the visions that I saw with it. And especially to the point that Ben made from even just something, and I want to call it simple, but it's not simple, it's a big, huge umbrella, the counseling department, that, you know, they can look at student number 8, and student number 8 is now going to have this just big picture amount of information from, you know, graduate of a profile of a graduate, but they're gonna say like, okay, we need 22 credits to graduate. We've talked about that before, and how complex and complicated that could look for each individual student, and to have, you know, our amazing counseling department, which is not made up of that many people who service so many kids, the click of a button, really be able to like use a program that's gonna say, you know, this student is lacking in this area, we can counsel the parents with the student. We can say, you're missing X, Y, and Z, or if you're a dual enrollment student or whatnot. I mean, my son just got his piece of paper that was handwritten from like, looks like 1974, like that says, you know, like you need these 4 credits and you have 0.5 and whatever. I mean, somebody is in that department sitting down with a piece of paper and a pen for all 520 graduates. But to think like that there could even be just a system in place that would take away that burden from our staff, but also provide a resource, one, to our kids to make it the best experience in high school, and to the parents to have conversations to figure out kind of electives and what's going to be best for kids and how they're going to graduate on time and just all the things. And that's just one piece of it, and this MTSS thing is a whole nother piece of it. And it's just, it's a really amazing platform that does so much that, I mean, I think it's amazing, and kudos to you all for learning what it even does so quickly in the last, you know, 8 months. I think it's pretty, okay, Rosalie, you're getting pointed at, so kudos to you for diving in and learning all that this can do for our kids and our staff, and even our parents and our families to have a better handle on what's happening with their kiddos.
Thank you.
So.
I've got one more question.
This is
So
fine.
this links up their SEL data and academic data, is that correct?
Eventually, so that is that's the long-term goal.
And then, who would have access to that information? Would that be like, so like thinking about like at the middle school where they have the 6 different teachers, do all 6 of those teachers have access then to that student's data? Would
Yep,
be the,
if it's their student, yes.
Okay, that's
Yep.
amazing. 'Cause one thing, and I mentioned this to you, Ms. Franco, a while back, but like some of our teachers who teach not in the ELA or math department don't always have access to iReady data that might indicate their student who's learning social studies is actually like a grade or 2 below in reading or something, like where that might be impactful. And so I think that having access to that information will help teachers that aren't even just in that traditional iReady group. So that should be wonderful. Thrilled to hear. Thank you.
Mr. Giamini, you mentioned that in order to tie into like Power School or some of these other things, we have to build those bridges, and do we have the talent within our staff to do that, or are we gonna have our students do it?
I was gonna have Google Gemini do it for me. We do have the talent in our staff, and Panorama is really good about setting those things up, helping provide a sort of a milestone process to work through. So we're gonna be working at that, but then we also have the responsibility on our end of getting some of this information into these places where it has not been in the past, if that makes sense. And we've had some tools, but stuff has not been going in. So we gotta fix some of that.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay. That brings us to our next topic, which, thank you, Rosalie. Brings us to our next topic, NCSD Student Handbook Discussion.
All righty. I'd like to let Dr. Carino present some work that she's been working hard on this year, working with an extensive committee on our student handbook and bringing clarity and consistency to those expectations.
Thank you. We have a extensive committee, like Mr. Micah shared, of building administrators at all of our levels across the district, as well as directors in different departments who have participated in this work since last September. We were really hoping that this was going to be a task that we could quickly wrap up, and we realized that it was very much more in-depth and it was going to take a longer time than we anticipated. So instead of doing a mid-year rollout, very similarly to how they paused on P2, we also decided that we wanted to kind of slow down, dig in a little bit deeper, and then intentionally and thoughtfully roll this out for the start of the 24-25 school year. Our goal was to review and update language from our previous handbook. The last time that was revised was back in 2019. And we really wanted to reflect the recently adopted board policies that we had transitioned to and make sure that we had grade appropriate expectations that really provided a proactive and student-centered approach. The current status is what was provided to you is a draft. And the reason it is a draft is because our legal firm, Troon Law Firm, provides boilerplate language to start with, and then we were able to personalize it just as you did as you adopted the board policies. And so really wanted to make sure before we rolled this out to students and families that we had the opportunity to provide them an opportunity to review this. And so we are hoping that that will come back before our next August meeting so that we can make any tweaks that we need to make based on their recommendations, and then move forward for hopefully approval from you at our August meeting. So if we look at what updates are in there, we have regular, typical, routine updates such as we updated the district calendar to reflect the 24-25 school year. We reflected our current administrators and points of contact across the district. We updated our new bell schedule. But the meat of our student handbook is the specific updates, such as an example of a family concern communication flow chart. If you have a concern in the district as a parent, who do you contact first? Is it the first phone call is to Mr. Micah, or do you start with your classroom teacher? So we wanted to make sure that that was included in our handbook. We wanted to make sure that we reflected district-wide procedures so that everyone had a common expectation of attendance, personal electronic device use as we start with our yonder pouches, as we have different expectations at different grade levels. We wanted to make sure we had common understanding for what our dress code expectations were, playground and recess rules, and then also really focus on discipline and our code of conduct. So if you look at just an example of a family concern communication flow chart, this involves a concern that was related to curriculum and instruction. So I'm not picking on the teaching and learning department, but I chose that as an example. So if a parent had a concern about curriculum and instruction, their first point of contact in step 1 should be to contact that classroom teacher. So they know the situation best, they're most directly related to that, so we would want them to start to try to problem solve with the classroom teacher. If that didn't work, step 2 would be to contact the school principal or assistant principal at that building to kind of escalate it and to say, I've tried to problem solve with the classroom teacher, but I need some more support. Obviously, if that still isn't meeting the parents' or family's needs, the step 3 could be to contact Mike Jeremini as the assistant superintendent. And we have similar processes for transportation, so in that case, we would swap out Devin for Mike. And finally, no one should ever call me, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm saying that you were off that list.
Yes. So for step 4, obviously, if they did not feel like they were able to find a suitable solution collaboratively through this process, they are able to contact Superintendent Micah for further support. So the next part of this is district-wide procedures, and so I'm not going to bore you with all of the details of obviously a very long handbook, but I just wanted to basically give some examples of things that are in our handbook that we have updated. So we wanted to make sure that we could define what different types of absences were. So what is the difference between an unverified absence? What happens when you actually call and document that a child is absent? So what are those? And so we provide those definitions of what the different types of absences are. What qualifies as a documented absence? So if you have a college visit, does that count as an excused absence, documented absence? What kind of absence is that for your child's records? So we wanted to provide some common language. We also wanted to make sure that there was consistency. At grades 6 through 12, we have one building for each of those levels, but at K4, we have 5 different buildings. And so we needed to make sure that what was happening at Village Oaks was also happening at Parkview, was also happening at Deerfield. And so we wanted to make sure that we had consistent definitions and expectations for what qualified as a tardy. And so we really dug into, when do you start marking students tardy as they come in the morning, and making sure that we were consistent going forward. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that 30-minute cutoff for a tardy in the morning, and then if you leave prior to 30 minutes in the afternoon, that's considered an afternoon absence. And then for grades 6 through 12, we determined that it would be 20 minutes for each hour would be considered tardy or absent. We wanted to make sure there was common expectations for if you have a planned absence. We know that many of our families travel, and so we wanted to make sure that they knew what the expectations were and what their opportunities were for make-up work and connecting with a teacher should they have a planned absence. Knowing that we were going to embark on potentially the Yonder pouches at tonight's meeting, we wanted to make sure that we address personal electronic devices at all levels. So tonight you approved the Yonder pouches for grades 5 through 8, but we wanted to make sure that we also address things at K4 and 9-12. So we basically said, first and foremost, all students across the district in grades K through 12 are personally and solely responsible for their devices. So should they lose them, should they be stolen, that is not the district's responsibility. And we also wanted to reiterate our beliefs that personal electronic devices may only be used before or after school at K4. So a student should not be coming to school and using a cell phone, should not be using an Apple Watch or another device personally during the school day. We have many opportunities for teachers and office staff to contact a parent or guardian should they have an emergency during the school day. So there really is no reason at K4 that a student would require their own device to contact a parent. They have an opportunity to travel to the office and then get in touch with the parent with adult support. At grades 5 through 8, this is kind of a reiteration of what you just kind of discussed about Yonder, but we would make sure that the expectation is that, again, personal electronic devices are not to be used during the school day. Every student will be assigned that pouch that will be would travel back to and from school each day. They will secure their device in the pouch when they arrive at school. They will maintain the possession of their device and will not use them until they unlock their pouches at the end of the school day. And they'll be required to bring that pouch back and forth to school every day. At grades 9 through 12, we basically determined that students may use cell phones or other electronic devices, but they must make sure that they're doing so safely, responsibly, and respectfully. School administrators and teachers may take a cell phone if a student's use of that device violates board policy, the student code of conduct, or any building or classroom rule. And so the building principal or an administrator or designee may require a meeting with the child's parent or guardian to discuss that rule before potentially returning the cell phone. Another example of something that we discussed in the code of conduct was dress code. And what I really want to make sure that we really reiterate here is that clothing may not display material that is substantially disruptive to the school day or has the potential to reasonably create a substantial disruption. And so that could be due to a variety of reasons, but we want to make sure that we are providing a safe and engaging classroom environment for our students, and we want to make sure that there is not going to be disruptions based on students' dress. So it has a variety of different reasons for what the clothing may not display, such as illegal substances, something that incites violence, something that contains fighting words, displays private inappropriate areas, and so we want to make sure that students know the expectation. And so this just continues going through that basically the final decision in any situation involving appropriate attire rests with the building administrators, and really needs to make sure that it follows our board policy, and that students who are dressed inappropriately will be asked to change clothing immediately, and if they don't have anything at school, they would be asked to contact a parent or guardian to make sure that they can bring appropriate clothing to change into. For our district-wide procedures for K-6 playground rules, our main focus here is playing safely and respectfully at all times. So we want to make sure that there's different parameters that students understand when they're using sports equipment or playground equipment, that they're playing fair, sharing, and making sure that they're staying within the perimeter of our playgrounds. So kind of shifting into our discipline procedures, we want to make sure that it's really stressed that we want to effectively discipline students in a manner that appropriately minimizes out-of-school suspensions and expulsions. We want our students in school, and we know that sending them home is not always the best case. And so we want to make sure that we are doing what we can as a district to keep our kids in school and address behavior in a productive and positive way. But we understand that sometimes we need to issue discipline, and so this just talks about the 5 different types of discipline. It could be in-school suspension, it could be removal from school for a certain amount of days. So the student code of conduct we looked at multiple districts, both in-state and out-of-state, to look at what their code of conduct said, and then looked at what our expectations were from 2019, and made some tweaks because we really wanted to make sure that we were using restorative practices to be able to use that as an alternative to or an addition to suspension or expulsion. And so we have 4 different categories of prohibited conduct and potential responses that we've identified. That is possession of inappropriate materials, disruptive behavior, academic integrity, discrimination, harassment, and bullying. And so defining what those behaviors are and making sure that we categorize those as we document student behaviors. So we've created a code of conduct and response rubric for our staff and administrators, and it ranges from a level 1 all the way through a level 4 as well as an SRO category. Our level 1 are typically behaviors that can be addressed by our classroom teachers. And so we know that not every behavior needs to be sent down to the office or referred to an administrator. So we want to make sure that we equip our teachers with strategies that they can address behavior in their classroom. A level 2 is something that is a little bit more involved, and so that there needs to be some continued support. It may still be that a classroom teacher is working on something in the classroom, but it's just not really changing the behavior. But it might also need that it needed some support from another staff member. Level 3 is an intensive, personalized response, so there might be some ongoing behavior or some more serious behavior, and so it qualifies as a level 3 response. And then a level 4 is responses for serious violations. The SRO category is where that it is so severe and extreme that we are requiring our administrators to contact our SRO at that time and make sure that they are involved in the situation. So this slide just basically shows that we have taken each of the behaviors of our code of conduct, and we have identified for our administrators where this falls, whether it's a level 1 that a teacher would handle, whether this is something that's a level 2, 3, or 4 that they potentially would be more involved with. So as I said, a level 1 response is mostly something that is a teacher response, and so we will make sure that in our upcoming PDs, if this should be approved at our August meeting, that we are planning to provide professional development so that our teachers know the toolbox that they're equipped with to be able to address these behaviors in their building. Our level 2 through 4 responses are something that will be implemented by our administrators and or our student success coaches because it's a more formal disciplinary component. So this is something that is not just going to be typically addressed in a classroom, but needs a little bit more support and more formalized discipline. So our next steps is that our administrative staff will return in the next couple of weeks, and we are going to be dedicating some time because they need to get together so that they can identify what the steps are. So we've identified what the behavioral expectations are, but they need to collaborate to determine if a student has 1 tardy or 3 tardies or 5 tardies, what is the consequence at that level? What is the next step? And so we want our high school administrators to be able to talk with our middle school administrators, to also talk with our Meadows administrators, to be able to say, what do you think that that is going to look like at your building? We want our K-4 administrators to talk about at what point would a letter go out? At what point would a parent conference happen? And so they will be taking this rubric and then determining what those next steps are and coming up with a common level expectation and response. We also want to make sure that any revisions after Troon completes their review of our handbook are updated, so we would include those updates for your review in the August meeting. Title IX policies are going to be changing as per our August legislation implementation, and so we want to make sure that we update those to have the most current reflections and protocols in the handbook. And we want to make sure that we bring the final version of our student handbook back in front of you for approval at our August 2024 meeting. Don Wachowski, our athletic director, is also working on a companion athletic handbook. So there is a section of athletics in this particular handbook, but he has also extended into a specific athletics-only handbook that goes into more detail about expectations for athletics. And so that will be kind of a companion document that we will bring forth to you next time as well. So we want to share information with staff stakeholders, and so we would like to, as you vote on this potentially in August, we will have plans to provide professional development during our welcome week for all staff. So each building administrator or department administrative team will facilitate a session with staff this fall regarding the updates to the student handbook and provide an overview of the code of conduct. So again, what are those leveled responses? What is the expectation of a teacher handling a situation in the classroom? What will be addressed by a building administrator or a student success coach? And then each building will share the new student handbook with students and families at the start of the 24-25 school year. What questions do you have?
I'd just like to add 3 things before I turn it over to questions. Number one, Dr. Carino has done a ton of work in this area. This is a lot of complex, things that you have to consider, tying it into our new board policies and everything else. Number 2, this is exactly what our teachers at every single listening tour have asked for. Since COVID, we have become quite lax in terms of structure and predictability, and some of that was out of necessity, but we are at a point now where we need to bring some more of those, clear expectations to our students and give our staff those tools. And another thing is consistency amongst the administrative team. In our previous policies, I was supposed to bring bullying data to the board on an annual basis, and I can tell you that I was actually going to, just out of curiosity, pull that data, and I asked our team, one of our team members, to pull that. And last year we reported in Power School 3 incidents of bullying. And I can tell you, I know of personally way more than 3 that occurred. And it wasn't as though the administrator was not accounting for it, but there was no consistency in this process. So what one principal called bullying, another one called inappropriate behavior or misconduct or something else. And so it makes it very difficult when you don't have a common set of language that we're using to determine each level. So I think this is gonna hit a lot of different buckets that our staff have been asking for and bring a necessary consistency across the district. So just a few extra things.
So I'll just say, when I asked you, Ben, if you had a productive July and you got everything you wanted done, and you said no, I can't imagine what this meeting would have looked like if your answer would have been yes. And I just say a lot of credit to you, Laura, for getting this done. I've really personally wanted to see the handbook revised, just like we revised our policy. So I didn't even know this was going on, but I'm really excited to see this, and I look forward to diving into this more, and also seeing the feedback from our from the other stakeholders come August. But I think this would be great if we could start off the fall school year with a unified approach for how we all expect everybody to behave.
Mrs. Baudouin.
So, with what you're mentioning about how this will help us classify certain behaviors into certain categories. So, if an incident occurs and the administration says, okay, this is misconduct, not a bullying, or this is bullying misconduct, or however that works, is there a process for that to be reviewed? Let's say, like if a parent has an issue with the way something is categorized, so what would that look like?
We would follow the family concern flow chart that's in the beginning.
So, but there is, let's say, my student, I don't know, left answers to a test out accidentally, and we say, okay, this is an academic dishonesty situation or something like this. This is very hypothetical. And so you say, okay, the student was cheating, and then I, as the parent, would say, okay, actually, this was just an accident, not an incident of like trying to cheat. So how would we appeal that? Because I know especially at the higher levels, like those notes and stuff can be, part of your record that will then, impact, I don't know, college applications, future things like that. So is there like a process of how that can be like reviewed then if we?
So you would go through the same process, so you would contact the classroom teacher, let's say it's a level 1,
Okay.
Consequence that a teacher handled in the classroom. And I'm just
Right,
broadening
just-
this to any concern, so it's not
Okay.
just academic dishonesty. But if something was classified and a teacher contacted you and said your child did so-and-so in the classroom and this was the consequence. If you had a concern with that, you would then reach out to the building principal. If you then had a concern with the building principal and couldn't problem solve for that, then you would talk to, the assistant superintendent. So you would go through that process,
Okay.
either way.
And then is there, like, so if my student has, something that hits whatever one of these behavior categories, is that information that I would receive as a parent if something's added to like my child's file and then
So,
how does that part work?
So it depends on what the level is. And so I would say, obviously if you were talking about a level 3, 4 or SRO, yes. If it is something where it's a teacher handling something in a classroom, we obviously encourage all of our teachers to have connections with parents all the time. But if it was something where they quickly did a restorative circle between a child on a playground, they may not necessarily bring that to your attention. But if it's the second or third time where this is going on in a situation, I would say 9 times out of 10, a teacher's gonna contact you and say, hey, your child's having a concern, and we need to kind of work through this and kind of problem solve what the next steps could be. So is it every single time? Potentially not, especially if it's, something, a conference with a student. If it's just like, hey, I'm gonna talk to you because we're just gonna kind of conference and you've corrected your behavior. But as a level 1 response, there is family contact. So that might be the solution that they select is, hey, we're gonna call mom, and we're gonna kind of problem solve this, and kind of talk about mom about what's gonna happen the next time that you do this. So that might be the step, and the reaction that the teacher selects is the parent contact. That might be the response to the behavior.
So I guess more so, you guys mentioned something going into Power School in a certain category.
Yeah.
So as a parent, would I be notified, this is what's being entered into Power School in your students?
Things are being entered into Power School now. That is not a change.
Okay, but so like, but that's not necessarily, so like if you said, okay, this student did this like tier 2 behavior, and now there's notes on this in the file, that's not necessarily something parents are notified about, like what something's specified as, or is that?
Not specifically, like we're focusing on the behavior. So like I think the classification is more for the administrative part. So it drives to our staff about, okay, so a level 1 is going to be what a teacher's going to handle. So a parent shouldn't be so necessarily caught up on, is this a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3? That's really for us internally. That's really for presenting it to all of you to explain kind of what the steps are just internally. If it's a significant concern, a parent's going to hear about it. Are they necessarily going to know the recap of what's typed in Power School? Of course not, but it's a recap of what you should have already been made aware of. So if your student got into a fight or was bullying another student, that's what's going to be in Power School, that this child had an interaction and, parent was contacted on July 23rd and we created a behavior plan, or they did a restorative circle with the other student. So it's really just a recap of what happened, so the action and then the resulting behavior and kind of the plan going forward. So nothing in Power School should be a surprise to a parent, but I would say the lower level issues may not necessarily reach to the point of an immediate phone call to a parent. Obviously, we encourage that all parents are involved and that staff are communicating it, but can I say that every level 1 interaction will be brought to a parent's attention? Probably not, and it probably doesn't need to be because the teacher's addressing a low-level behavior in the classroom.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you, Dr. Carino. I think we will be moving on. Next come our committee reports. We have 2 committee reports, curriculum and administrative committee report on June 25th. Mrs. Beaudoin.
The curriculum committee met on June 25th. President Cook, Trustee Mishner, and myself were in attendance with several members of our administration. We discussed the curriculum refresh cycles and the process that will be used going forward. We'll have a rotation for the different subjects to be reviewed each year, so similar to the 3-year plans that Ms. Johnson was reviewing with us, we'll have kind of a similar structure on our curriculum review. It's going to be in 4-year cycles, so every subject will be looked at least every 4 years. And then they mentioned if laws change or requirements change, then those things are reviewed as needed. We also talked a bit about the accelerated math program and reviewed some of the pros and cons of our current system. There are no plans to make any adjustments to it. It's just a thing that we kind of are discussing and looking at in the future to see how that system works for our community, and as things change with admissions and expectations academically, we want to make sure we're kind of keep on top of things. And finally, we reviewed some of our iReady data from the spring, and that data will be brought to the full board, I believe you said next month, correct?
We'll have a
Or
fall.
is it in the fall, you said?
Yeah, we'll have a
Okay,
fall
I
iReady presentation, Mr. Germany. I don't know if you know the specific time frame, but
I don't know.
Fall-ish.
Fall-ish.
Okay. So it will be reviewed more fully. When we reviewed this data on June 25th, it was still like hot off the printer, correct? So we haven't really fully dug into it, but we kind of got the preliminary information at this point. And that's all I have.
Thank you. The other committee was the DEI Administrative Committee. Mr. Mishner.
So this was our second administrative meeting. We had an abbreviated meeting in which we kind of had a take-home assignment to review the charter for our committee and also take a look at our strategic plan goals and to see how they fit into DEI. So I look forward to reporting back to the board as a whole in our findings next after we meet and just have a brief discussion of our summary. We also got a report from Mr. Germini on kind of a sum up of the year for all the district and also building DEI committees, what they have done and what they're looking to do. I would say the best example of going forward, what we can expect is if you look at your wellness goal number 3, you can see a lot of what has come out of the district DEI committee has found its way into supporting that goal. Some of the highlights being a district-wide multicultural event and also having 100% participation for all the buildings, having some sort of multicultural activity, community event night. So those were some of the highlights out of the DEI committee. Again, we do have building DEI committees in every single building now that are fully staffed and fully functional. And so this was the first year that that was the case, so I really look forward to seeing what the different building teams do as they have a chance to, move into their second year working together. So overall, it was a real positive meeting, and we plan to chunk out different topics that we came up with in our first meeting throughout the course of the rest of the year. So we'll be reporting on those things that we agreed to as a committee we thought were priority to take a look at from a DEI lens.
Thank you. This brings us to our superintendent report.
all right, you've pretty much heard my report tonight, so I will yield the rest of the time to the next items on the agenda.
Okay, so administrative reports. Mr. Kling, you had 7 seconds. Mr. Germini, you were 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Dr. Carino, you were 44 minutes and 18 seconds, so you lose. Mr. Kling wins. He can either defer or go now.
Ooh. I think I'd like to kick. I'll take the ball in the second half.
So you're going to defer?
I'll defer.
Okay, Mr. Germini, you're up.
Oh, I wanted to kick Mr. Kling.
That's recorded. Easy for my
We
lawyer.
get a little punchy at the end of the night, right? Very briefly, I don't even remember when it happened now. There was a really long presentation that we did, and you approved the K-4 literacy materials. Our coaches, administrators, and a bunch of volunteers spent days unboxing the Wit and Wisdom stuff because that arrived in the month of June. I mean, days. I took a picture, forgot to post it. It's almost overwhelming the amount of materials that are there, but they did an amazing job. Those are set for our teachers, and the really great reading materials are coming in this week and next week. So we'll get those all set for everybody. Really appreciate everybody's hard work. And of course, we have a very busy season in the summer for teaching and learning, which is planning our professional development, particularly for the August Welcome Back Week, and teachers come back earlier this year. So all those plans are being fine-tuned and really gonna start the year with lots of great learning, and I will stop talking.
Okay. Dr. Carino has an excuse. It's summer's hiring season, so she took a lot of time for that, so, but I'll let you go now.
Explained everything that we are working on. Nothing else left to do.
Second half.
All right, here we go. I'll keep it brief. So to get an update on the e-transit vans, I think they're scheduled to be manufactured in middle of August sometime. Wouldn't be surprised if that gets pushed back, but just an update there. Had an opportunity to walk Meadows 2 weeks ago and today. And absolutely stunning, absolutely crazy how fast that building is moving along. And really excited for staff and the community to see that when that's done. It's going to be really impressive. And last but not least, audit is the week of September 26th. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to our board communication. Do any board members have anything they'd like to add to tonight's meeting, just to kind of keep us awake? Mr. Mitchner.
So I'll just say, from the incredible staff we just onboarded to, you know, the purchase and the investment in our transportation, to the technology pouches, strategic plan approval, and then all the great projects we have coming down the pipeline. To borrow a phrase from my son, best meeting ever. So this was really fantastic. I think there's so much good stuff going on here. It's really cool to see the systems, the academic department, our HR department, our transportation department really shining in how they're going to move the district forward to. And we don't just spend money on really amazing buildings and equipment. We are also investing in really great systems and structure to support the academics and our staff and students. So I think this was an amazing meeting from that standpoint.
Any other board communication?
I'll just say one more.
Okay.
Please go read the book. It's just generation. Work that I promised.
Okay, I'm going to share a little anecdotal story that occurred. I was involved in last week sometime. I shared it with Mr. Micah, but I have a friend who's a teacher in a neighboring district. And one of the things Mr. Micah does with our union rep is go around and do these listening tours, where any teacher, any staff member can bring up a topic. And as I was talking to them, and I started to mention this, their jaw hit the table. They've been teaching for over 20 years, and they had yet to have any administrator ask them what they thought or what they could do. And it was just, to me, it was dumbfounding, because it's kind of in our culture here to get that feedback, to understand where where our shortcomings are and what we can do better and how we can support not just the students but our staff. And I kind of have to give my kudos to Mr. Micah for doing that, and to the rest of the board for actually wanting to understand, you know, where our staff is at. So appreciate everybody's interest and hard work, and with that, we'll call for our last item.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Dr. Ruskin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0.
You can take your placemats home with you, or you can leave them here, but there will be more rigid ones in the future.
I need it as an umbrella.
Yeah.
I know.